Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Human Resources in History. This podcast aims to offer insights from 7,000 years of human history to help modern human resource practices. I'm your host, Jin. I'm an HR professional, and I love history. The script of this podcast is generated using AI, and it's based on our blog post which we published a few weeks ago under the same topic. This voice is a synthetic clone of my real voice, and it is generated using AI. Today's topic is Catherine the Great's Transformation Dilemma. This is the third episode in our Enlightenment Series, where we look at historical figures who grappled with massive changes in their time and draw parallels to today's organizational challenges. Catherine's story is fascinating, and I think you'll enjoy the journey we're about to embark on. Let's start by setting the stage. Russia before Catherine the Great. Before Catherine came into the picture, Russia had a complex and often tumultuous history. It all began with the Slavs who inhabited what we now know as Russia. According to historical chronicles, these tribes invited the Varangians, or Vikings from Scandinavia, to bring order to their lands. A leader named Rurik established his rule in Novgorod in 862, kicking off the Rurik dynasty. Then came Oleg, Rurik's successor, who made Kiev the capital and united the Slavic tribes. In 988, Vladimir the First converted the people of Kiev to Orthodox Christianity, which was a big deal. It laid the cultural and religious foundation for the region. Under Vladimir's son, Yaroslav, Kievan Rus' reached its golden age, but the golden age didn't last forever. By 1240, Kievan Rus had splintered into smaller principalities. The Mongols swept in, conquering Kiev and establishing their dominance through the Golden Horde. This period, known as the Mongol Yoke, lasted 240 years, though Moscow began rising as a new center of power. Eventually, Ivan the Great threw off Mongol rule, and Ivan the Terrible, the first Tsar, expanded Russian territory dramatically. The Rurik dynasty ended in chaos, but the Romanov dynasty took its place in 1613, leading us to Catherine's era. Catherine wasn't even Russian by birth. She was born in the Kingdom of Prussia and married her second cousin, who would later become Tsar Peter III. Now, Peter didn't have the most successful reign. It lasted less than a year before Catherine orchestrated a coup to seize power. Once she became empress, Catherine earned her title the Great through her incredible achievements. She expanded Russia's territory, founded cities, universities, and theaters, and elevated Russia's status as a European power. But Catherine wasn't just about political and territorial dominance. She was deeply influenced by the Enlightenment, a movement that emphasized reason, progress, and human rights. Catherine admired thinkers like Montesquieu, Rousseau, Voltaire, and Diderot. She even purchased Diderot's library, hired him as a curator, and gave him a generous salary advance. Her correspondence with Voltaire was extensive, and she sought advice from these intellectuals to enhance her image as an enlightened ruler. Here's where things get tricky. Catherine embraced many Enlightenment ideals, but she ruled as an absolute monarch. Absolute monarchy and Enlightenment principles, like the idea that sovereignty belongs to the people, don't exactly go hand in hand. It's like trying to mix oil and water. They just don't blend. Catherine did make some reforms. Her Nekaz, a set of legal principles she wrote, promoted ideas like individual land ownership and fair trade, but she didn't abolish serfdom. In fact, she expanded it to maintain her regime stability. Compare this to France, where the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen proclaimed that sovereignty belonged to the nation, not a monarch. France's transition involved a revolution. Catherine didn't take that route, and Russia remained under autocratic rule. It's a stark reminder that structural systems, whether in governance or organizations, often resist change unless completely overhauled. Now, let's connect this to today's business world. Imagine trying to implement agile methodologies in a traditional enterprise. Agile emphasizes flexibility, frequent delivery, and self-organizing teams, while traditional models rely on rigid plans and hierarchical structures. Sound familiar? Just like Catherine's attempts to bring Enlightenment principles into an absolute monarchy, many organizations fail to implement agile because they don't address their legacy operating models. They might introduce sprints and scrums in one department, but without a company-wide cultural shift, these efforts are often met with resistance and the infamous "it won't work here" attitude. To truly adopt agile, companies need to transform their culture, processes, and structures. It's not just about ticking boxes, it's about rethinking how the organization operates from the ground up. Speaking of organizational transformations, let's talk about HR. McKinsey's modern HR operating models, like Ulrich Plus, Agile HR, and employee experience-driven approaches, provide valuable frameworks for adapting to different organizational needs. For example, the Ulrich Plus model empowers HR business partners with more execution responsibilities, while Agile HR uses cross-functional teams to quickly address priorities. But transitioning between these models isn't easy. It requires leadership commitment, a clear strategy, and time. You can't just snap your fingers and expect it to work overnight. Before we wrap up, let's imagine, what if Catherine had taken a different path? What if she'd shifted Russia from an absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy? It's a wild thought, but maybe, just maybe, she could have inspired other monarchies like France's House of Bourbon to follow suit. If that had happened, perhaps France could have avoided the bloodshed of the revolution. While it's just speculation, it highlights the importance of bold leadership willing to dismantle outdated systems in favor of progress, something we still need today, especially in the face of global challenges like climate change. Catherine's story teaches us that real transformation requires more than good ideas. It needs systemic change. Whether we're talking about 18th century Russia or 21st century organizations, the lesson is clear. You can't build a new house on an old foundation without addressing the cracks. That's all for today's episode of Human Resources in History. If you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to check out our blog and subscribe to the podcast. Until next time, keep learning from the past to shape a better future. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode.